What is your take on this conundrum to where wages are actually going up, but the American people feel worse about the economy now than they did during the 2008 recession?
Right. So listen, no, I think you're spot on. It's the cumulative effect of inflation. That's what has people in such a dour mood. After 5 years of prices steadily increasing, and my polling suggests that the most vexing aspects of higher prices are food and insurance. And of course, you touched on both of those. Now, here's the thing. Prices for food, example, you're exactly correct. They are not coming down unless we actually enter a deflationary environment, which nobody wants. That would be terrible for Americans. So wages need to continue to go up. There is good news to tell there, as you explained, about real wages. That's really the mother's milk of Main Street prosperity. Real wages, meaning your pay adjusted for inflation, has been significantly ramping up under President Trump. But here's the biggest problem. And Trump is his own worst enemy in this regard. You cannot effectively tell that story. You can't persuade people of this positive trajectory when you first insult them by telling them that the economy is great for them and telling them that they're doing just fine. That is the Joe Biden playbook. And unfortunately, the Trump White House, the president himself, a lot of Republicans in Washington, they have literally copied and pasted the Biden playbook of lecturing to people. You need to acknowledge their angst, their worry, their pain. It's real. It's palpable. It shows in every single survey, including ones run by me, and I'm no liberal, okay? Acknowledge the pain, and then you can sell them on the current trajectory plus the future-looking plan for prosperity on Main Street again.
Affordability is the new watchword, or as the president likes to call it, affordability, a bludgeon that the Democrats are using to hammer President Trump as consumer sentiment in America plummets. Now, many in the president's orbit want him to do a better job of explaining his agenda to the American people or sympathizing with their economic pain, communicating how he's working to help them. But the winning message is not actually about costs. It's about wages. Think about it. There's two ways that you can really think about affordability. You can tackle it from the point of view of lowering costs, or you can tackle it from the point of view of raising wages. If people are making enough money, they won't be as bothered by things costing a little bit more. An affordability crisis happens when wages aren't keeping up with prices. So you can solve that by lowering prices or by raising wages. Now, of course, everybody wants lower prices, but we actually don't want massive deflation. If the cost of goods suddenly plummeted, it would mean that we were in a recession and wages would, of course, soon follow. What we should actually want is higher wages, especially for working class Americans. And the data suggests that that's actually what we've got. Wages are up, and they're up by a percentage or two over inflation. Now, that should not be surprising. The president's entire second-term agenda, both on the foreign policy front and the domestic front, has been built around this idea of raising working-class wages. From the tariffs, which were designed to reshore manufacturing, to the trillions of dollars in foreign investment, to the trade deals with Japan and South Korea and the EU that opened their markets to us, to the mass deportations that tightened the labor market. All of this together is designed to reorient an economy that for 50 years was an upward funnel of wealth from the working class to the elites and just turn that spigot down. Through its mass deportation campaign, the Trump administration is engaged in a massive re-Americanization of the workforce. And that means that some of those industries which had a high share of illegals, construction or meatpacking or janitorial services or trucking, are now going to be less cheap, because our fellow Americans are going to be doing those jobs. Folks, that's a feature. It's not a bug. We want our fellow Americans to be paid a living wage. We got drunk on cheap goods and cheap labor, and we have to learn what it means to believe in this country again, to believe in its workers, and to take some responsibility for the common good. Now, Americans still aren't feeling good about the economy despite rising wages. But in my view, that has a lot more to do with the runaway costs of healthcare, education, housing, and insurance than it does just with the cost of goods and services. And those need to be the president's next targets. It's not enough to give Americans $2,000 for healthcare that costs tens of thousands. The insurance companies will just raise prices if you give people that money. The president has to negotiate on the price of healthcare, as he did so amazingly on the cost of drugs. Unfortunately, the president's political runway may run out before people get to see the real fruits of all of this labor. And honestly, that would be a real shame. We have a great panel for you today, but before we do, we're going to bring in Sean Spicer with a word about our sponsor.
Thanks, Batya. I appreciate you holding down the fort for me today. But before we get into the panel discussion, this is going to be great. I know. I want to tell you about our two great sponsors today. You've heard me talk before about an unbelievably influential group in Washington, D.C. that is Concerned Women for America. They have led the charge on so many cultural issues. They were against guys in women's sports before it became a cool issue. Their leader, Penny Nance, has been making sure that they're at the forefront of these cultural issues. They know exactly what a woman is. You don't need to ask them that question because they've been leading that question. They've been leading that charge, making big decisions, having an influence in Congress. They care about 7 core issues: family, sanctity of life, religious liberty, parental choice and education, fighting sexual exploitation, national sovereignty, and support for Israel. For over 45 years, the folks at CWA have been setting up chapters, leading the voice in the cultural discussions that our country has. And for a donation of $20 or more, you'll get a copy of Penny's brand new book called 7 Rules for Success in Business and Life, A Woman's Guide. I'm telling you, it's a great Christmas gift. Maybe you read it first and then give it to someone. Maybe it's that gift for someone special that you're looking for in your life. This book is an incredible gift for any young woman graduating or beginning their professional journey. Penny Nance succinctly breaks down everything that's going on in the world and what you need to know. So go to concernedwomen.org/Spicer, concernedwomen.org/Spicer for your copy of that book today for a donation of $20 or more. concernedwomen.org/Spicer. And by the way, if you're right now getting ready for Batya and saying, I want to have a great snack, I've got the answer for you. Masa chips and Vandy crisp. I'm telling you guys, sit back, enjoy this panel discussion, and get a great snack. These Masa chips are unbelievably the best tortilla chip I've ever had in my entire life. Tastier, crispier, and only 3 ingredients, right? Check this out. Right on the bag, you can pronounce everything: organic corn, 100% grass-fed beef tallow, and sea salt. They come in a variety of flavors. I love the original. These are the ones that always sell out, though. They've got a blue, lime, which I do love those too, habanero, and then Vandy crisp. Hands down, the best potato chip I've ever had. Same thing. 3 ingredients in this potato chip. Guess what? Potatoes, shocker, 100% grass-fed beef tallow and sea salt. That's it. No ultra-processed seed oils, nada, nothing. This is Maha-approved great snacking. And these potato chips are unreal. I've got one of the bags down there that I snack on, and I've already blown through. They've got a French onion. They've got our barbecue. I had these out of Thanksgiving. Everybody gobbled them up. VandyCrisps.com or MasaChips.com. Either way, my pro tip, get the variety pack and use code Sean, S-E-A-N, for 25% off. That's MasaChips.com/Sean or VandyCrisp.com and use code Sean. All right, Batya, take it away.
Joining me now, I could not be more thrilled to have Steve Cortes here of Steve Cortes Investigates Substack Documentaries, founder of League of American Workers. We also have Charles Love, co-host of Cut the Bull, author and speaker and political commentator, and Kathy Barnett, weekend host of 1210 WPHT Talk Radio. You guys are 3 of the smartest people that I know. I am so excited to talk about these issues with you. Steve, let's start with you. If there's either anything you want to talk about, disagree with in my monologue, what is your take on this conundrum to where wages are actually going up, but the American people feel worse about the economy now than they did during the 2008 recession?
Right. So listen, no, I think you're spot on. It's the cumulative effect of inflation. That's what has people in such a dour mood after 5 years of prices steadily increasing. And my polling suggests that the most vexing aspects of higher prices are food and insurance. And of course, you touched on both of those. Now, here's the thing. Prices for food, example, you're exactly correct. They are not coming down unless we actually enter a deflationary environment, which nobody wants. That would be terrible for Americans. So wages need to continue to go up. There is good news to tell there, as you explained, about real wages. That's really the mother's milk of Main Street prosperity. Real wages, meaning your pay adjusted for inflation, has been significantly ramping up under President Trump. But here's the biggest problem. And Trump is his own worst enemy in this regard. You cannot effectively tell that story story. You can't persuade people of this positive trajectory when you first insult them by telling them that the economy is great for them and telling them that they're doing just fine. That is the Joe Biden playbook. And unfortunately, the Trump White House, the president himself, a lot of Republicans in Washington, they have literally copied and pasted the Biden playbook of lecturing to people. You need to acknowledge their angst, their worry, their pain. It's real. It's palpable. It shows in every single survey, including ones run by me, and I'm no liberal, okay? Acknowledge the pain, and then you can sell them on the current trajectory plus the future-looking plan for prosperity on Main Street again.
Brilliant. Kathy, you're a Pennsylvania girl, swing state. Everybody has to win. A lot of people feel that this affordability crisis is going to impact the midterms, that the Republicans stand to lose the House. What is your bellwether telling you? You're in the thick of it. How do you see the whole affordability crisis?
Yeah, well, allow me to say I agree 100% with what you and Steve have just said. You could not have articulated it any better than that. Listen, we all know that geopolitically, Donald Trump inherited a hot mess, and he had to come in. He had to do a lot of different things. And it felt very strange to actually see someone go toe to toe with China to bite the bullet with the tariff and all of that. Wars, rumors of wars all across the world. And I, for one, am grateful that Donald Trump went in with a sledgehammer and started straightening things out. But you're absolutely correct. Come the midterm next year, voters are not going to be thinking about the tariffs and China and what is going on at the border. They're going to be primarily thinking domestically and thinking specifically about their wallet. And I feel the squeeze. We all feel the squeeze. Steve is absolutely correct. It feels like a damp blanket has been tossed over all of us. I want to be happy. I want to be enthusiastic, but I'm looking around and I feel as if I have to double click and double think about the various things I want to do, very simple things. And I think that is going to be on the top of the minds of the voters. And Donald Trump, in addition to what Steve said about his problem of being able to come out and just articulate the facts, right? Yes, it's red meat to call people stupid and living in hellholes, but living in Pennsylvania, you got to win more than just MAGA. You have to have a message that has the ability to translate and tell a very convincing story. But in addition to that being one of Donald Trump's issue, I think the other issue is that he's dealing with a Republican Party that is showing very few signs of life. They're more interested in galas and drinking and taking photos to plaster all over Instagram than they actually are of legislating. So right now, Donald Trump is legislating based off of executive orders and waiting for the Supreme Court. So let's see what happens, but that's my take.
So Charles, I think Kathy brings up a really interesting point. Nancy Mace didn't have a great week. She had a meltdown in the airport. Maybe we'll get to that in winners and losers. But she wrote an op-ed for the New York Times. And, I went into that op-ed thinking, oh, what's Nancy Mace going to be telling the liberals in the New York Times? But when I read it, it was actually a very compelling op-ed, which she said was only 4% of legislation that's written by members makes it to a House vote. That she said, what is the point of Congress anymore? There is this feeling among members of Congress. She brought up a bunch of very popular issues, like a ban on stock trading, on House members and Senate members trading stocks, that has the support of close to 80% of Americans want this and can't get it to a vote on the House floor. Issues like that, where it really feels like Congress is working against democracy rather than for it. What is your take about how government is working right now and how that ties into the affordability question?
Well, that's a complicated one because, it's not really working. And you're right. I think one of the things that Trump doesn't get enough credit for is I've always looked at both parties, the Democrats being worse, but, even the Republicans being feckless in a lot of ways. Right. And you talk about, is it the system of or is it a bug? The norm has been not to do anything. Trump is dragging them right across the line to get them to motivated to do some things. So without that push, they tend not to want to do anything unless, they're forced to do it. The status quo is fine. But at the same time, I'm more of a, especially when you talk about the economy, small government enthusiasts in the sense that the country is so big that is nothing you can do and try to tweak around the edges and think it's not going to affect everything. And I don't think affordability is something that you're going to fix, legislatively. Now, it doesn't mean that some of those things don't need to be done that Nancy may have mentioned and others. There are things legislatively that need to be done, but that's kind of the problem is people want government to fix the problems when in many ways they're the problem. When you talk about prices, some of the prices, especially during Joe Biden's administration, were there specifically because of actions he took, which actions that should not have been taken. So that's a part of it. And then lastly, like Steve and Kathy mentioned, you said a lot of good points in your opening. And one of them was talking about wages. A lot of things are, working against each other. Like you can't say we want more, we want to stop having these H-1Bs and we want to stop all these immigrants taking jobs. We want Americans to work. We want to pay them more and then think that prices are going to go down. I mean, those things don't work together. So there's a lot of things in there that you're trying to do and they don't work, but then the same thing with legislation. If you write legislation to try to fix the affordability problem, I don't know. I think it just causes another problem.
I want to move on to another topic. Super interesting. Birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court is going to take this up. I think this is one of those things that people who voted for the president didn't even realize could ever even happen. So the Supreme Court is preparing to hear Trump v. Washington, a case that could overturn birthright citizenship. The court's decision will determine not only the legal status of children born to undocumented or temporary status parents, but the constitutional boundaries of who belongs to the American political community. The president's executive order seeking to overturn birthright citizenship pointed out that the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend universally except to people who are subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's the quote, and that's what is going to be discussed and determined by the Supreme Court. I want to start with you, Charles. I love hearing the president talk about this because he points out that the 14th Amendment was meant for the descendants of slaves. And I have this thing in my craw where it seems to me that Americans descended of slaves have been sold out by the left to every other minority community, by the way, including immigrants who are Black, who come here with a lot of money and then take up affirmative action positions that should go to the ADOS community, Americans descended from slaves. And I love hearing the president stand up for Black Americans and say, you have been sold out and taken advantage of by the left. That seems to me to be sort of the crux of why this issue matters so much. What say you, Charles?
Well, I'm laughing because I wish people knew how often you and I have a conversation because this is like one of your things. But he's right about that. And I don't think, one of the things that I sit back and watch, whether I agree with these issues or not, is I like the fact that the courts are taking on all these, that Trump is pushing to make us have clear distinctions on all these kind of gray areas, right? To kind of tighten up things that were loose. And the courts, I don't know what the courts are going to decide. We can all speculate on that. But I think it's pretty clear if you take emotion and politics out of it, that what the intent was. No one would intend, you may be right, but it's not even about what the original intent being about descendants of slaves trying to make them part of the country, though it's true. The issue is, should someone come here illegally, sometimes specifically to have kids to become American citizens because they're gaming the system, right? And just come here pregnant, let's say, and drop a baby and have that. How are they under the jurisdiction of this country, right? They are diverting the laws in order to get here and hiding, right? Remember, they're living in the shadows. So that's an even completely separate and what seems to me clear issue. It's not even, overturning birthright citizenship. It's clarifying what it means.
Charles, I think that's such an important point. I'd like to tell a tangible story about that because America so often gets abused for our were very good intentions. And I think asylum, for example, is a great example of that, right? That we have a welcoming heart for people who are truly fleeing for their lives, but then it's systemically abused by corrupt NGOs and the Biden administration to get tens of millions of people into the United States who clearly are not legitimate asylees. But similarly here on birthright citizenship, I filmed a lot of documentaries on the U.S. border. When I was filming in Rio Grande City in Texas, South Texas, a place that Donald Trump won, by the way, massive reversal from Democrat to Republican. That was the main reason I was there. But while I was there, I saw at the end of the school day, hundreds and hundreds of school children heading to buses and then heading south of the border, crossing into Mexico over the Rio Grande. I said, what's going on there? Is it a field trip? And no, they are Mexican children. Now they're American citizens because all of them, quite purposefully, their mothers took them to the United States literally for the birth. Okay. Start hanging out right near the border when you know you're getting close. Cross the border, have the baby, American citizenship per these ridiculous precedents that we've set in this country. Those children live in Mexico. Their families are Mexican. They pay taxes in Mexico. They send their children across the border every single day, every day for school in American public schools in Rio Grande City in Texas. And the schools must take them. Now, I'm not blaming the children, of course. It's not their fault. The point is, we have constructed a system that is just made for this kind of abuse. And it's on a massive scale all across the United States. This makes sense for no one. This is not remotely what was intended by the 14th Amendment. I hope the court does the right thing here.
Yeah. If you don't mind, allow me to just jump in. I feel like, have you guys ever played double dutch where you're just waiting for your turn to jump in? Like, that's how I feel right now. You are so right, Batya. This is so infuriating. I grew up on a pig farm in Southern Alabama. I grew up below the bottom rung of the economic ladder. I grew up in a home with no insulation, no running water, outhouse in the back, well on the side. And I had to work very, very hard and keeping my nose clean and doing the right thing in order to build a life for myself. And I believe, going back to our earlier discussion, the American people are feeling the weight and the burden of every single person in the world wanting to come into our country, and many fellow Americans saying, yeah, any and everyone can come inside this nation. Now, the house that I just described, my great-great-great-grandmother Rhoda grew up in that home. She was a slave. I have the blood of slaves coursing through my veins. And when I look at the 14th Amendment, this amendment was written for people like me, for people who have the blood of slaves, to say that in this country will never again look at people like me and say, I'm not welcome, I'm not a citizen. And so when we have others who come over here by sky, by sneaking under barbed wire, drop a baby, and then say, I'm going to use that anchor baby to bring in all my cousins and nieces and nephews. And now they too are going to reap the benefits of the nation that we've built on the back of on our back. So yes, I feel some kind of way, as you might imagine, about this particular bill and how it has been exploited. And to Charles' earlier point, these laws are written in a moment in history. They are not frozen. And now the U.S. Supreme Court has a decision to make. Was the 14th Amendment really meant to cover people who are here in clear violation of our laws, or was it aimed at people permanently and lawfully subject to U.S. jurisdiction, like freed slaves and their descendants? I am going to be watching, and I expect them to vote in the proper way.
And what's amazing about this is that, of course, the left is going to portray this as racist somehow, when actually it's coming at the expense of Black Americans, as we've sort of pointed out. A very similar thing is happening with the Somali fraud case coming out of Minnesota. You had fraud to the tune of, it's been uncovered, at least $1 billion, but now there are reports that this number has climbed up to $8 billion. News Nation, where I work, had a report that something similar is happening in Maine, to where a group of Somalis created fake NGOs in which they claimed that they were feeding hungry children and giving services to autistic kids and housing the homeless. And actually what they were doing was embezzling billions of dollars from American taxpayers. And of course, people pointing this out and how horrific and unacceptable it is to take advantage of the immense generosity of the American people to be gifted with the greatest privilege on earth, American citizenship, and then turn around and throw it in our faces by stealing from us somehow being upset about that is racist. So here we have a clip of a Minneapolis city council member making just this argument.
Thing I do want to say, and obviously everyone knows that our president is racist, xenophobic, Islamophobic, and we are going to fight that. America has a history of fighting and stopping those kind of individuals who continue to divide people and divide communities.
Kathy, let's start with you. I mean, how does that make you feel when you hear immigrants calling the president, defending your taxpayer dollars, racist? I mean, they're trying to erase the distinction between citizen and non-citizen with this race card. That's how it strikes me. What say you?
Absolutely. My first thought, talking about facts, because that's what he was saying. Another fact is that his country of origin really is a hellhole. And so that's a fact, and they don't want to talk about that particular aspect of it. But if you come to America, you don't get to live in little Somalia with better Wi-Fi. You come here to become an American. Assimilation is not a suggestion. It must be a mandate. Immigrants should absolutely be required to assimilate. They should assimilate to our laws, our languages, our culture, our values. And if you benefit from America, then you should also be forced to bear the responsibilities of being an American. For me, this is very simple. This isn't about skin color. It isn't about accent. It isn't about what kind of clothing you want to wear, what kind of food you want to eat. I don't care what kind of food you want to eat. I don't care about what kind of clothing you prefer to wear at wedding ceremonies. I care about three things. Do you obey our laws? Do you work instead of loot or welfare programs? And is your loyalty to America or to some foreign government or clan? And if the answer is no to any of those three questions, then you need to get the hellfire and damnation up out of our country. And I think Donald Trump does a great job in speaking very plainly to this. America is worth protecting, and we need to understand the value of this nation. This is the greatest country that has ever been created, but it's the greatest country, not because you and I are so particularly special, but it's because we're founded upon Judeo-Christian values, and that was interpreted into a constitution, laws. And so we must obey, must follow these laws, and we must demand that every person who comes to this country leave the allegiance of the hole they crawled out of and pick up a new allegiance and become an American.
That is so beautifully stated, Kathy. Charles, they're now calling Trump not just racist for being against Somali fraud, but also for this clip, of course, at his Pennsylvania rally this week. He started talking about Ilhan Omar again. Let's play that.
Do we have any individuals from Somalia in the group? Please raise your hand. That's from Minnesota, That's called the Great Big Minnesota Scam, with one of the dumbest governors ever in history. I love this Ilhan Omar, whatever the hell her name is, with the little turban. I love her. She comes in, does nothing but bitch. She's always complaining. She comes from a country where, it's considered about the worst country in the world, right? They have no military, they have no nothing, they have no parliament. They don't know what the hell the word parliament means. They have nothing, they have no police. They police themselves. They kill each other all the time. I love it. She comes to our country, and she's always complaining about the Constitution allows me to do this. We ought to get her the hell out. She married her brother in order to get in, right? She married her brother. Can you imagine if Donald Trump married his sister? Beautiful. She's a beautiful person. If I married my sister to get my citizenship, do you think I'd last for about 2 hours, or would it be something less than that?
Charles, your reaction to the...
Oh, my reaction. Okay, I'm sorry. Was that it? So that's perfectly piggybacking what Kathy said. What Kathy said was so beautiful. It was right. I agree with it. If they don't want to be part of America, they want to spit on America, they need to go. But He is not helping in how he frames it. There's a line he needs to go to, and pushing the line is what he does best. And sometimes he needs to. Does he need to chop the line, cross it, set it on fire? I don't know. Because the clip before that had I think you said the Somali was in the city council, and he was calling everyone racist. And I'm watching that clip, and I'm thinking, is it 2020 still? Are we still just calling everything right? Are we still buying this stuff? But unfortunately, some people do. And those who might be on the fence will see the clip and say, see, it's racist. What he's saying is not wrong. There are rumors that she married her brother. We need to find out if that's the case, because that's kind of a problem. She does bitch a lot. It's true. It's true. It's true. Right. And she's an elected official, and she's always talking about how bad the country is. That is a problem. All that is true. I don't think it helps his cause in the delivery as much. There should be a better way to do, like Kathy did, talked about who we want and who we don't want. Just totally dismiss the racist stuff out of hand. That's silly. I want you to come here if you want to be, part of the building the American society, and you assimilate. But if you come here to, like Kathy says, create your own little country and have your own little laws, your own little police, and speak your own little language and not be part of the country, but then use our tax dollars to do it, there's a problem. But there's a way to do it and not sound so, I guess, racist, they say. But, I just think that's not the best play. And people are going to use it and put it in clips to kind of run politically.
Charles, I think that's very important. And the way that I would suggest framing it and talking about the exact same sentiment, but in a way that's probably easier to sell, is to talk about gratitude, right? Because it is so important in life, right? But any society, for America to be just, to be effective, to have cohesion and patriotism, we need to have a general sense of gratitude in the country. It's just one of the most noble aspects of any person, any society. Unfortunately, we've largely lost that in society, and certainly among immigrant groups who largely now show up with expectations and with demands, quite frankly, on the United States. My own father, who immigrated to this country, was unbelievably grateful until his death to what this country afforded him and to the fact that he had an American family and American children. Too many immigrants now don't have that worldview. And as a statistical ramification of that, I would point out that the majority of immigrant-headed households in America are now receiving some form of welfare, some means-tested benefit, the majority. That says we're not doing immigration correctly, and that's legal immigration to this country. Among Somalians, by the way, from CIS, which does great work, Center for Immigration Studies, among Somali immigrants in Minnesota, this is astounding, 81% are receiving welfare. 81% are getting some form of public assistance from coming here. And then on top of that, you have at least a leadership class of that Somali community, most notably Ilhan Omar, who displays the exact opposite of gratitude, right? Who dismisses and disparages the United States that saved her, by the way, from a abysmal refugee camp in Africa. And she openly pledges that her allegiance is not to the United States, but to her home country of Somalia. And so it's important, by the way, that we run this down, because for years these allegations have swirled around her about her immigration fraud. And if she, in fact, did lie in her naturalization, that is a crime. She needs to be denaturalized and she needs to be deported back to Somalia. But the issue, of course, is way bigger than just Ilhan Omar. The issue is about what are the standards that we're using, the filters we're using for legal immigration? Who are we letting into this country? And to Kathy's point, are we expecting and demanding assimilation of them as a prerequisite to becoming a naturalized American, and making certain that, in my view, for the rest of their lives, they are not eligible for means-tested assistance in the United States for any kind of welfare. And we're not doing it correctly. We must fix this. My policy, at what I advocate, is it's time for a pause. We need to take a complete pause on legal immigration to assimilate the people who are here, to figure out what will make sense going forward, and to prioritize American citizens who, as we talked about earlier about the economy, are frankly struggling right now.
Can I make two real quick points about you? One, I think that with to Trump's approach, right, again, pointing out that he's right, most of the Somalis who come here came because there was a civil war, because he said something about them fighting each other. So he's not making this stuff up. And secondly, when we talk about race and when he talks about Ilhan Omar and all these other things, we're ignoring the fact, we kind of forget the fact that there was a lot of fraud going on. So we get into the fight about personalities and all this stuff, and we forget about the billions of dollars they stole.
I mean, go ahead, Kathy.
Oh no, no. Oh, again, it's the whataboutisms, right? So we want to talk about the racism and Donald Trump's not being nice and he's not being kind and he needs to use softer words. What about the fraud that is almost, that some reports say is approaching $1 billion? They took $1 billion from Americans who, who want to provide, who want to assist, who wants to help. And Steve, I heard you say once before that that the receipts of the GDP of Somalia, about a third of it, comes from Somalians who are here in our country. So how much of that almost $1 billion that they've stolen and schemed and have taken away from American citizens and sent over to Somalia? So
isn't there a guy in Maine from Somalia who did that, who sent money there? He was running for office in Somalia, and he was trying to start a paramilitary organization down there. He was using tax dollars that he stole.
And so we're constantly talking about the whataboutisms. Oh, Donald Trump needs to use softer, kinder words. The left is not soft. The left is not kind. They are brutal. They were forcing people to take a jab, whether they wanted it or not. They were getting people fired. They swung open the borders of our nation, allowed 20 plus million illegals to just walk right into our country and walk into some of the most desperate of neighborhoods within our own country. Look at fentanyl and all of the things that we have had to do. Look at what we're finding out about January 6th and how they just trampled on people. People committed suicide because of all the things that they were going through with January 6th. And now all of a sudden, I'm supposed to use nicer, kinder, softer vocabulary so that I don't hurt someone's feelings. No,
not you, just Trump.
People out of our country.
It's so interesting because I'm very mind divided on it. I was on CNN last week, so the Monday and the Tuesday after the Somali story broke. And on Monday, they didn't cover it. It wasn't one of the topics. You're on for the whole hour. It's 4 topics, like the main stories of the day. They didn't cover it. I brought it up, but it wasn't one of the topics. But by Tuesday, because Donald Trump had called Ilhan Omar garbage, that was one of the topics. So at least the liberal audiences heard about the fraud, but only because they were outraged about how Trump was talking about it. Steve, you wrote a Substack about this. Tell us a little bit about what you uncovered in your investigation.
Yes. Well, and as Kathy mentioned, I was astounded to learn this, that 1/3 of the GDP, 1/3 of the economy of Somalia is remittances, almost all of them coming from the United States, a lot of them coming from Minnesota. And we now know at least a large portion of that being fraud, being simple theft. It's not hard-earned money earned in America. And again, we know that 4/5 of Somali immigrants to the United States and Minnesota are on welfare. So living on the public dole, sending money, some of which is stolen, back to their home country of Somalia. And what I wrote about in my Substack, it's CortezInvestigates.com, I'm actually connecting that scam to the scam of Ukraine. And I believe in both cases, what we have is foreigners effectively stealing at scale, from the hardworking taxpayers of the United States. And again, with the best of intentions from America, in the case of the Somalians, an openness to foreigners, an openness to people who are fleeing war. In the case of Ukraine, trying to assist a nation that has been abused and invaded by a tyrant, by Vladimir Putin. But yet, in both cases, Zelensky and the Somalians, they are defrauding the United States. They're doing it on a massive scale. And at a time that's never okay, but particularly not at a time when Americans are enduring a lot of economic angst and pain here at home. So it is time for us to stand up for ourselves and say, we will not tolerate being abused by foreigners. We will not tolerate systemic corruption. And we're not afraid to say, and part of why I connected Somalia with Ukraine is you have a black nation in Africa, you have a white nation in Europe. Both of those countries have widespread cultures of corruption and fraud. It's not about race. It's about the culture of that nation. And we must realize that. And there's nothing xenophobic or racist or bigoted about recognizing that when places have cultures of fraud, where it is systemic and where in some cases it's not even looked down upon, we need to be extra careful about how and if we even interact with those countries. And I believe the United States has been completely scammed by foreigners in Ukraine and by foreigners in Somalia.
Absolutely brilliant. Equally infuriating. It has nothing to do with race. Charles, I think you're right that a lot of people hear Trump's comments on Ilhan Omar Black people and do feel, well, only a racist would talk about somebody that way, whether they're right or wrong. I don't believe Trump is racist. I guess my question to you is, do you think the next iteration of MAGA, the next MAGA leader, the next GOP presidential hopeful will get more support from the Black community? I mean, Trump got a historic 25% of Black men. Or do you think that's because he knows that actually he was popular in that community before he ran for office, and that, you know, it's going to be business as usual for the GOP going forward in 2028?
That's hard. I think it's probably going to be a mix. Trump, it's so unique in that he's able, whether you like it or not, to understand the landscape and speak in a way that he can just cut through the noise. So, and not knowing who that next person is hard to say. I don't think they'd have to be really bad, which we've seen before, but they'd have to be really bad to go back to what it was before. So they got to, you know, be able to hold some of those gains. But that's the reason why his increase was so large amongst Black and Hispanic men and not so much for women, because I don't know if we can say this on the Sean Spicer show, but there are differences between men and women. And so because of that, Trump could say something and women would be like, oh, I'm so turned off.
Right.
And the guys would laugh. I have people just like, oh, that guy's so funny.
Such a
right.
good
They
point.
think it's funny. And they're like, but it's, and I wouldn't say it that way. Like I said, it seems like I'm contradicting myself because I'm saying I wouldn't say it that way, but I'm not offended by it. Right. So a lot of the people, guys would hear it and like, but he's not wrong. That's something. Now maybe he shouldn't speak the way we speak in the barbershop, but that's what we would say in the barbershop, so they can relate to it. I don't think the next person would do that because they're going to have advisors in their ear or whatever. They got to be whatever their personality is. So they're going to lose some, but depending on who it is, to be fair, what I think will probably happen if the GOP finds their next leader and he's a strong leader and he kind of can read the landscape, he'll take enough from Trump that he can use without making it seem fake, like Gavin Newsom tries to do. And then use part of his own personality, and he'll lose some of those MAGA people, but he will gain some of the people who are turned off by Trump's directness. So there'll be a balance. That's my guess, but it would depend on who the person is.
Yeah, I was recently giving a talk to a group of high school kids, and one of them was like, you said Trump is not racist, but, he kept saying that Kamala Harris wasn't Black, that she was Indian. And I was like, have you ever been in a barber shop? Because that's the kind of thing you hear a lot. Kathy, same question to you. Do you think that what should the next GOP candidate, what should the next iteration of the GOP focus on in order to grow that share of Black voters rather than shrink it?
Yeah, I agree with Charles. Donald Trump is very unique. People did not vote for the Republican Party as much as they voted for Donald Trump. And J.D. Vance looks like he can carry a lot of that mantle. Who knows? But I think, and maybe Steve can speak to this better, whether or not with the big beautiful bill that starts in January, if there would be enough time from January to November to see many of those policies and laws actually begin to manifest themselves in the lives of average Americans. And so that is what the focus needs to be on, affordability. Hopefully your viewers, Sean's viewers, are picking up on the common theme throughout everything we've talked about that has a direct impact on affordability, whether we're talking about the big beautiful bill or whether we're talking about the fraud or the illegal immigrants or anchor babies. All of these things are not disconnected. It is a finely threaded line that runs through all of them and right to our kitchen tables.
Amen. I think that is so true. And with that, we will turn to the winners and the losers of the week. Let's start with you, Steve. Who lost the week?
Who lost the week? I'm going to go with J.B. Pritzker. Might surprise you that I'm going with a governor, not somebody, necessarily in Washington or not always on the national stage. But the reason I want to pick on Pritzker, and he's not the only governor doing this, but these Dem governors have insisted that they're going to continue to tax tips. I think this is very big news because under President Trump, thank goodness, hardworking people, working class people who make their living from tips, waiters, waitresses, car parkers, people who drive for Uber or Lyft, they are no longer going to have to pay taxes on tips. But states like New Jersey, New York, Illinois, California, insist that they are going at the state level to continue to tax them. I pick on J.B. Pritzker a lot because he effectively, through his horrendous mismanagement of the state of Illinois, ran me out of my hometown of Chicago. I now live in Tennessee. I am a cultural and political refugee to red America, but forced out by Pritzker. So he's my loser of the week. My winner of the week on the other side of the equation for the economy is Scott Bessent, who I think just continues to do a magnificent job. I think he is the most valuable member of the United States cabinet. I think he gets affordability in a way that very few people in Washington, D.C. do. I'm glad he's in the president's ear. I'm glad he's doing a lot of media. Scott Bessent is my winner of the week.
Kathy, winner and loser.
Okay, loser is I too am going to pick on a governor, and that is going to be Governor Josh Shapiro, who signed the Crown Act, an amendment expanding Pennsylvania Human Rights Act to include hair texture and protective styles like braids and Bantu knots and, whatever else. What a loser. How stupid is this, right? Black people, there are 99 problems in the Black community, and hair racism is not one of them. And in 2022, 916 people filed a complaint under so-called hair racism. 916 people out of a state of roughly 13 million people. That's effectively impacting 0.00007% of the population. It is, but of course, he did a big to-do at a Black hair salon. First time he probably ever went into a Black part of Philadelphia at a Black hair salon. And he stood behind a bunch of Black women, loud mouths, and just kind of talking about how they won something. They won nothing. It is exhausting, and it's all about optics. So Josh Shapiro is my loser. The winner in the reverse sense, as you know, I went on to Roland Martin's show, talk about the biggest Black grifter ever to exist. And these grifters, one of the things, by reading the comments as I was on air, I'm talking about hair racism, and all they're doing is discriminating against my hair. It's a bunch of Black people talking about my hair. And
you need a Crown Act.
I know. I was like, I need to get, I was about to scream hair racism, but I decided not to. But, but one of the things that I realized is that these Democrats, they have the Black community's mind on lockdown. Now, yes, some of them Donald Trump was able to appeal to, and he was able to pull them over. But by and large, they see racism everywhere and in everything. And in the reverse sense of a winner, these grifters are winning. Roland Martin doesn't believe the things that he's saying, but it's profitable to him. And so these click chasers, they appear to be winning right now in the reverse sense of the word. It's not a good thing, but
yeah, Kathy, your winner is so bleak and dark. Charles, what about you? Winner and loser?
I hate to be so much like my buddy Kathy. And I'm going last, but my winner is going to be one too. You're definitely not going to like it, Batya, but maybe it would move people to move away from so much focus, because my winner's Candace Owens.
Ugh. That's funny because she's my loser.
But they won't stop talking about her. Her podcast is going up so high. We keep giving her so much air, right? So whatever her intentions are, we collectively, but we are propping her up. So she's winning because every chalk, CNN's talking about her, Batya's talking about her. I'm like, please stop talking about Candace Owens. So she's winning in the sense that, kind of like Kathy's sense of a negative winner, but it may not be positive news, but as long as they're talking about you, they say, right? And my loser is the Somali immigrants, because Trump's coming. Right? He's that fraud has opened up, and not just the fraud so much as them openly
that's interesting.
Attacking him, saying you're racist, or I wish he would come here because now ICE is specifically looking for them. So now
your loser is a positive one. That's a nice counterbalance. I
countered the other one.
I think Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes are the big losers because a lot of their engagement was shown in studies this week to be foreign bots. And Erica Kirk literally went on Fox News to repudiate their junk. I just feel like there's no coming back from that. I think that she's just a sideshow at this point. No one could possibly take her seriously anymore. I don't care how much money she makes. She's out. And I feel like what was being portrayed as like a split on the right was revealed to be what I have been saying all along, a split between content creators and actual conservatives. And I feel like their day is done. The winner for me is me, because I got to have this amazing conversation with the three of you. This was truly, I think, the best conversation anybody's had this week. I so enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me and for this amazing show. Tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show, Sean has an exclusive polling on affordability, so you don't want to miss that. And if you want to check out my show, Batya! Head over to News Nation. It airs Saturday at 4 p.m. and 11 p.m. God bless you and protect you all. And God bless the United States of America.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.